A 48-year-old black woman walked into her own luxury hotel and got turned away. "We're full. Guests only," the front desk clerk said. She didn't argue. She just made one phone call. And everything changed. Vanessa Claiborne wasn't looking for special treatment. No welcome party. No red carpet. Just a room key, a quiet place to sleep, and one night to rest before an important board meeting. She hadn't planned to attend in person. But as soon as she stepped through the revolving glass doors of the Oakmark Grand Hotel in Des Moines, Iowa, nothing went how she expected. She entered calmly, with the kind of quiet strength that doesn't need attention. Her soft loafers made no sound. Her tailored pants were simple but neat. Her dusty blue silk blouse was clean but plain. A canvas duffel bag hung from her shoulder. No assistant. No crowd. She looked like any other guest. Or maybe someone trying to blend in. Behind the front desk, a young receptionist was chewing the end of her pen. Her long nails clicked on the keyboard. She looked up and gave a basic smile, the kind meant for someone you're about to turn away. "Checking in?" she asked. Vanessa smiled politely. "Yes." Under Claiborne, Vanessa. The clerk typed, then stopped. She blinked and her lips tightened. "I don't see any reservation under that name." "That's fine," Vanessa said calmly. "There's always a suite held for me." "Ma'am," the receptionist said, her tone changing, "we're actually full tonight. You need a confirmed booking to stay here. Guests only." Vanessa's smile stayed, but the energy in the room changed. She looked past the clerk to the gold sign behind her. Oakmark Grand, a Claiborne property. Her name wasn't just on a reservation. It was on the building. "I am a guest," she said quietly. "And more than that, I own this hotel." The receptionist blinked, stunned for a moment, as if Vanessa had said she was royalty. Then came a skeptical smirk. "You own the Oakmark?" Vanessa nodded, calm as ever. The receptionist leaned toward the desk phone. "I'm going to have to call the manager." "Go ahead." Across the lobby, a couple in golf shirts looked over. A man near the fireplace tilted his head. Vanessa felt it, the shift in the air, that familiar look. Someone's lying, and we think we know who. A moment later, a thin man with a crooked tie and a clipboard came out a side door. His badge read Assistant Manager, Neil Dorrance. He glanced at Vanessa and started speaking in a cheerful voice that felt too forced. "Good evening. Is there a problem with your reservation?" She says she owns a hotel. The receptionist said a little too loud. Neil paused. Vanessa kept her eyes on him. "I'm not claiming," she said firmly. "I do. My name is Vanessa Claiborne. It's on every quarterly report, every board memo. I'm staying one night. There should be a suite under the owner's block." Neil adjusted his glasses. "Right, just one moment, please." He turned and muttered something into his walkie-talkie. Vanessa didn't move. She didn't raise her voice. But the air grew heavy. That's when security showed up, not aggressive, not hands-on, but enough to make a point. One stood by the elevators, another near the coffee bar, just in case. Vanessa didn't flinch. But inside, she felt it, that quiet fire rising. Not just because they didn't recognize her, but because once again they assumed she didn't belong. She could have pulled out her ID. She could have shown emails, legal documents, even photos from the ribbon cutting 6 years ago. But instead, she stepped back, pulled out her phone, and made one call. That's all she needed. Because this wasn't just about getting a room. It was about something much deeper. And the people in that lobby were about to learn the hard way. Vanessa didn't pace. She didn't sigh. She didn't pull out her camera to record like some might have. She simply stood near a marble pillar, phone still in hand, quietly waiting. The call lasted just 26 seconds. She didn't have to explain much. Didn't even raise her voice. She gave her name, her location, and said, "I've been denied access to my own property. I need this fixed now." And then she waited. At the desk, the receptionist kept typing, as if her screen might magically show a different result. Neil returned holding a folder. He looked nervous. When he saw Vanessa still standing calmly, he tried a softer tone. "Miss Claiborne," he said, putting extra weight on the last name, I think there's been a mix-up. We just need to verify. You can verify all you want, Vanessa said gently. But I'm not moving. Neil looked toward the security guard, who didn't move. The staff seemed frozen, caught between doing the right thing or doubling down. Vanessa noticed the stares. 3 women near the window whispered behind their hands. A young man holding a laptop pretended not to watch. The doorman had stopped greeting anyone. Then she noticed something else. The receptionist checking her phone under the desk, probably Googling her name, probably expecting nothing. It would have been funny if it weren't so familiar, because this happened all the time. People thought they knew what power looked like, what a leader sounded like, what an owner wore. And someone like her, brown skin, natural hair pulled into a neat puff, no designer bag, no flashy jewelry. Didn't fit the picture. That's what hurt, not the rejection, but how normal it felt. She thought back to another hotel lobby. Years ago in Milwaukee. She was 28, just made VP, wearing heels that hurt and a cheap suit that barely fit. Security had followed her from the moment she walked in. She was only saved when the CFO came down to greet her himself. She never forgot that day. Now here she was, 20 years later, still having to prove herself, in a building with her name on the deed. She sighed softly, eyes scanning the room. Still no apology. Still no correction. Just awkward silence and people pretending not to stare. Then came the sound, ding. The elevator doors opened. 2 men stepped out, one in a gray suit with a clipboard, the other in a company fleece. They didn't look like hotel staff. They moved with purpose. Vanessa recognized them right away. Regional Vice President Brent Kessler, District Manager Carlos Reno. And now, they were the ones who looked nervous. Brent hurried across the lobby, nodding toward Neil without stopping. "Miss Claiborne, we are so sorry," Brent said as he rushed over. "I just got the call," Carlos added, slightly out of breath. "We're fixing everything right now." Neil started to speak, but Brent silenced him with just a look. The receptionist froze. Her eyes widened as it finally clicked. She now realized who Vanessa really was. Her face turned pale, and she slowly backed away. "Suite 1202 has been cleared," Carlos said after checking his tablet. "Your driver will be updated and ready to take you anywhere you need in the morning. Your usual fruit tray and espresso will be waiting upstairs." Vanessa gave the slightest smile. "Thank you." But she wasn't done observing. She wanted to see how everyone acted now that they knew who she was, how their tone might shift, how their body language might change. She wanted to see firsthand how power changed people once it entered the room. Because it's one thing to be mistreated when no one knows your name, but it's something else entirely when they do, and choose to mistreat you anyway. Carlos pulled Neil aside, whispering sharply. Brent was already on the phone, speaking in short, tense bursts, mentioning HR policies and serious service failures. All the pressure that had been aimed at Vanessa had flipped. Now it bounced around the staff like panic in motion. But Vanessa didn't gloat. She didn't cross her arms or smile in triumph. She walked calmly back to the front desk, step by step, quiet and firm. She placed her phone gently on the counter. "I'll take the 12th floor suite," she said, voice steady. "Same setup? Please have someone check that it's clean." The receptionist opened her mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa didn't wait. She turned to Brent. "Am I checked in?" "Just now," Brent answered, flipping through his clipboard. "You'll have 2 key cards and a report on this incident by the time you reach the elevator." "Good. And the rest?" Brent nodded. "We've issued a site-wide alert. The corporate audit team is on standby. All staff will go through retraining on guest policy. Disciplinary action starts tonight." Vanessa glanced at the receptionist. She was now biting the inside of her cheek. Her long nails tapped nervously on the desk, no longer confident, now clearly shaken. "You'll speak to her," Vanessa said quietly. Brent cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am, with HR present, privately." Carlos looked like he wanted to add something, but Vanessa raised her hand. "I'll speak to her too. Not now, after I've rested." She took her key cards, nodded once, and headed for the elevator. Heads turned. Some guests whispered. Others just stared in silence. But no one dared speak to her. The elevator doors opened, and as they closed behind her, Vanessa could still see Neil, stiff as a board, sweating at the front desk. Up on the 12th floor, the suite smelled faintly of lemon and eucalyptus. The fruit tray was there. Espresso pods were neatly arranged next to the machine. A handwritten card with her initials sat on the table. Clearly rushed, but there. She walked slowly through the room, taking in everything, not just checking for dust or mess, but for attitude, for intention, for proof that someone, somewhere, still cared about the space she had once built with her own hands. This hotel wasn't just business. It was personal. It was her story. She remembered being 33, standing in front of a bank in Minnesota, pitching her dream. The bankers barely listened. They offered her terrible loan terms and clearly didn't believe in her. They had dared her to succeed. And she did. Now, nearly 20 years later, here she was again, still proving herself. Even in a suite with her name on the deed. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. Everything is in motion. Let me know if you want to issue a media statement. Vanessa paused. She could have gone public. One tweet, and the story would explode. One interview and headlines would write themselves. But that's not what she wanted tonight. This wasn't about going viral. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect, and how too often it was tied to looks, not truth. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed, hands folded. Outside, the city moved on, cars on Grand Avenue, a distant train horn. But inside, everything felt heavy. Then, a knock on the door. Room service. A young man wheeled in a fresh espresso, a note of apology from the kitchen manager, and an offer for a complimentary massage therapist. Vanessa thanked him softly, then closed the door behind him. She sat again, took a slow sip of espresso, and looked out the window. City lights flickered in the distance. Something was shifting, not just in the hotel, but inside her. At exactly 6:30 a.m., Vanessa Claiborne stepped out of the elevator. This time, not as a guest, but as the CEO. Her suit was sharp, dark charcoal with a crisp ivory blouse. Her heels echoed with every step. And in her eyes, a calm, focused power that no one dared interrupt. The lobby was just waking up. Guests checking out. People grabbing coffee. But the room shifted the moment she appeared. Staff turned. Conversation stopped. Even the barista at the corner kiosk froze mid-pour. Brent and Carlos were already waiting near the fireplace, holding 3 folders and 2 cups of coffee they hadn't touched. They looked exhausted, like they hadn't slept. Vanessa gave them a small nod and walked straight toward the small executive conference room, past the concierge desk. Brent followed. Carlos came right behind him. Inside, seated stiffly at the table, were the assistant manager, Neil, the receptionist. Her badge said Kayla Mendez, and a woman from HR who introduced herself as Marta from corporate. She already had her notepad open. Vanessa didn't sit. She stood at the head of the table with her arms folded. No one spoke. The silence was thick. Then Vanessa spoke quietly. Would someone like to explain what happened last night? From your perspective? Kayla immediately looked down. Neil cleared his throat, but nothing came out. Vanessa waited. Finally, Kayla muttered, I just didn't think she was... I didn't expect... You didn't expect someone like me to own this building, Vanessa said, calmly and in control. Kayla gave a tiny nod. Was I rude to you? Vanessa asked. Kayla shook her head. No, ma'am. Did I raise my voice? No. Did I threaten anyone? No. Her voice was barely a whisper. Vanessa took a deep breath and turned slightly toward Marta. I'm not here to get anyone fired, she said, but I do expect accountability. Marta nodded, understood. Carlos spoke next. We're ready to issue a formal write-up and remove her from the front desk until she completes retraining. Neil will be put on administrative review while we complete more interviews. Vanessa nodded once, then finally sat down. She looked at Kayla again. How long have you worked here? For months. In that time, have you ever thought about who built this hotel? where it came from. Kayla hesitated. I just assumed it was owned by some corporation or investors. Vanessa let the silence hang for a moment. Do you know how many hotels I built in this country? Kayla shook her head. 17. From Baltimore to Phoenix. Every one of them built with care. Designed to feel luxurious and welcoming. I built this brand because I got tired of being treated like I didn't exist. She leaned in slightly. So tell me, how is it that I can walk into my own lobby and still be invisible to people working under my name? Her voice wasn't angry, just tired, real, and heavy with truth. Kayla looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Neil stared ahead, his face flushed red. Carlos spoke again. We've written a memo going out to every Claiborne property today. Mandatory training on inclusivity and hospitality. Company-wide. No exceptions. Vanessa turned to him. Make sure it's not just something people check off. I don't want memorized scripts. I want people to understand what respect looks like, especially when they think no one is watching. Brent finally spoke. We'll make it real. Vanessa stood. The meeting was over. As she walked back through the lobby, staff straightened up. Some gave small nods. Some looked nervous. She didn't nod back. She wasn't there for show. She was watching for real change. But before she left, there was one last conversation she needed to have, and it had nothing to do with policies or procedures. She waited until the morning rush quieted down. Not for drama. Just to make sure there were no distractions. No ringing phones. No fake smiles. Just space for truth. She found Kayla sitting alone in the staff lounge behind the coffee bar, a half-eaten muffin in front of her. Her phone lay face down on the table. She looked tired. Vanessa didn't send someone to get her. She walked in herself. Kayla sat up fast, almost spilling her drink. Relax, Vanessa said, pulling out the chair across from her. I just want to talk. Kayla swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Drop the ma'am. Vanessa said kindly. This isn't a hearing. Kayla nodded, her eyes low. They sat in silence for a moment. The fridge hummed softly. The overhead lights buzzed. Then Vanessa asked, have you ever worked somewhere that made you feel small? Kayla blinked, then looked up. Yeah, most of the time. Tell me. Kayla hesitated, then shrugged. I worked at a diner near I-80 for a year. Wore a paper hat. Got yelled at by the cooks every shift. Customers never tipped. Some called me kid. Even though I was 27, I felt invisible most days. Vanessa leaned back. So you know what it's like to be ignored. Kayla nodded. Yes. Then help me understand, Vanessa said gently, how you could look me in the eye last night and decide I didn't belong. The silence that followed was full of guilt, of realization, of truth settling in. Kayla's voice was rough. I don't know. I didn't mean to. When you came in, I thought maybe you were lost or waiting on someone. You didn't look like... She stopped. Didn't look like what? Kayla shook her head, like someone who owns hotels. Vanessa didn't react. And what does that person look like? Kayla had no answer. That's the problem, Vanessa said. We all carry a picture in our heads. Clean cut, probably male, probably older, definitely not me. That picture doesn't just stay in your head. It affects your choices. It shapes how you treat people. I'm sorry, Kayla said softly. Really? I know it's not enough. But I am. Vanessa nodded. That's a start. But I'm not here for an apology. She leaned forward slightly. I came because I want you to see me. Not just your boss. Not some cautionary tale. A person. Kayla looked confused. I was you once, Vanessa continued. I started as a receptionist. Got mistaken for a janitor more times than I can count. People call me sweetheart and honey, like I wasn't the one keeping the place running. She smiled. Every time I had to choose, do I fight back or let it go? When I finally made it to the boardroom, I promised myself I'd build places where people like you could rise. Kayla's eyes widened. You really started as a receptionist? In St. Paul, Vanessa said. My first boss told me I sounded too educated to be on phones. So he moved me to night audit. That was the beginning. Kayla gave a small, stunned laugh. That's wild. It shouldn't be, Vanessa said. It should be normal. She stood. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be aware. Every guest, old, young, dressed up or not, deserves dignity. Start there, and you'll never need to recover from nights like last night again. Kayla stood up too. Thank you for talking to me, she said. I really mean that. Vanessa gave her a small nod and walked away. As she stepped through the lounge door, she felt something inside her ease. The message had landed, finally, in the place it needed to. By mid-morning, the Oakmark Grand had returned to its usual rhythm, at least on the surface. Guests rolled suitcases across the shiny floors. Coffee cups clinked gently at the bar. A family asked about local zoos. The world kept moving just like it always does. But inside the management office, things were different. Brent stood by the window, watching the valet rotate cars in front of the hotel. Carlos was typing quietly, working on the official internal memo. Marta, the HR rep, was going through new onboarding materials with serious focus. And in the center of the room, Vanessa read a stack of employee reports. Some flag for review. She wasn't angry. She was clear. I'm not here to punish, she said, scanning a page. I'm here to stop this from happening again. Carlos looked up. We're updating our interview process for front desk staff. Not just skills. We're testing for empathy and bias, too. Good, Vanessa said, tapping her pen once. And add me to the property visit rotation next quarter. I'll show up at random hotels, just like I did here. Brent raised an eyebrow. You want to go undercover? Not undercover, she said. Just unnoticed. Until I'm not. Carlos grinned a little. That's going to make people nervous. Good, Vanessa replied. Let them feel it. This job doesn't come with warnings. She stood, slid the reports into a folder. Make sure the new training launches by next Friday. And include real guest stories. No fake lines, real words. Human ones. Brent nodded. Consider it done. Vanessa stepped out into the lobby. She paused near the front desk, where a new receptionist had taken over. He smiled at her right away, kindly, respectfully, like someone who knew she wasn't just another guest walking by. She nodded back and looked around. Everything seemed normal, but she could feel something different. Small cracks forming in old habits. And that's how real change starts. Not with press releases, not with public apologies, but with quiet corrections, repeated until they stick. Vanessa headed to the elevator to grab her things. Her flight wasn't until the afternoon. There was still time. When the doors opened on the 12th floor, she stepped out. The carpet was soft beneath her shoes. The hallway smelled like lemon and clean linens. Her suite door was slightly open. Housekeeping must have just finished. Her bag was packed, zipped, laptop ready, charger coiled neatly. Everything in order, except one thing. A note sat on the nightstand, folded in half. She opened it. Miss Claiborne, thank you for your grace. I'll be better. Kayla, no fancy card. No envelope. Just a torn page from a notepad in careful handwriting. But it meant more than any official apology ever could. Vanessa folded the note once and slipped it into her purse. Downstairs, a car was waiting. The same doorman from the night before held the door open for her. Safe travels, Miss Claiborne, he said warmly. We hope to see you again soon. She smiled. You will. As the car pulled away, Vanessa didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had left something behind. Something heavier than a suitcase. She left the weight of being misjudged, the quiet pain of having to explain her worth. What replaced it was something better. Understanding, discomfort, growth for the hotel staff, and maybe even for herself. But there was still one more message to share. Not with the hotel. Not with Kayla or Brent or Carlos. This one was for you. For anyone who's ever stood in a room and felt like they had to prove they belonged. The ride to the airport was quiet. No small talk from the driver. No music on the radio. Just the soft hum of tires on the road. Vanessa sat in the back, one hand on her purse, the other still holding Kayla's note. She hadn't read it again. She didn't need to. It was enough just knowing it was there, a reminder, proof that the night before meant something. She looked out the window. Rows of brick buildings, old gas stations, faded signs for bakeries and repair shops. She hadn't planned on being here this week, but maybe she was meant to be, not for the board meeting, not for business, but for that conversation, because this kind of thing didn't surprise her anymore. She wasn't angry that it happened. She was tired that it kept happening, tired of how people still judged others by assumptions. Tired of being silently pushed aside. Tired of having to explain things that should be obvious. Yes, this is mine. Yes, I built it. Yes, I belong here. But she wasn't bitter. That's what people often misunderstood. Vanessa didn't carry bitterness. She carried memory. And memory, if used well, could be powerful. As airport signs came into view, she thought about her younger self. That girl working overnight shifts, in stiff uniforms, no makeup, no praise, just grit, just a belief that one day she'd build something no one could take from her. She did that, but even with 17 properties and a team behind her, people still looked at her and saw someone less. So, what do you do when the world won't see you clearly? You see yourself. You walk in anyway. You speak calmly. You don't wait for permission. You act like the door was always yours. At the terminal, Vanessa stepped out, grabbed her bag, and nodded at the driver. No words needed. Inside, people rushed past with coffee and carry-ons. Announcements echoed from overhead speakers. Vanessa moved through the crowd quietly, almost invisible again. But inside, something had settled. She had taken a moment of humiliation and turned it into a mirror that showed everyone in that hotel exactly who they were. And mirrors don't lie. She hoped Kayla would grow. She hoped Neil would learn. She hoped Carlos and Brent would keep every promise they made. But even if they didn't, she'd still be standing. She always had. Because dignity isn't something anyone gives you. It's something you never give up. And for anyone watching, anyone who's been ignored, doubted, or spoken to like they don't matter, Vanessa had one final truth. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just have to know who you are and walk like it every single time. Let them feel uncomfortable. Let them learn. Let them wonder how they ever missed it. And when they do finally see you, make sure they never forget.